So about 2 years ago or so, our lodges moved buildings. And during that time, I wanted to make sure that everything for the dedication of the new building looked really, really good. So I took all of the aprons home and was giving them a wash because if you're watching this from other grand jurisdictions, perhaps you guys buy your own aprons, things along those lines. But in the jurisdiction that I am in, a lot of times we have aprons right outside of the lodge room for the brothers to wear, and they look like they were purchased in like 1963 when you were still able to smoke in the lodge, or at least in the building anyway. And they had like nicotine yellow, and I tried everything. I tried bleaching it, I tried OxyCleaning it, boiling them, and then putting stuff in, letting them soak and everything. And it was just a huge mess. And so I thought I'd get some new aprons. And eventually I figured out how to make my own. So that's what today's video is all about. So let's knock 3 times and let's get it started. Hey guys, it's Z back with another episode of Observing Freemasonry, and like I said, about 2 years ago or so, we moved buildings, and when we were doing our dedication, I wanted to look really, really nice, all the guys in their aprons, and they were nice and white, and things along those lines. And probably like many of you, the lodge had their own aprons that they were allowing for brothers to use. They were made of duck cloth, probably had ties on them, and they just looked like they hadn't been replaced since 1963. And I was searching on Reddit about people making aprons, and no one had really made any of their own aprons. They would buy their own. And I figured, what a great experience it is to make our own aprons. So I went through and I went and started to make my own aprons, and a couple of tries here and there, and some things worked well, some things didn't work well. So I'm making about 6 aprons actually today. So I thought I'd make a video and let you guys see that. Now the reason I'm making the aprons is because, how do I put this nicely? The aprons that I made for the Blue Lodge were set to be my size. Now, I don't consider myself a very large Mason, nor do I consider myself a very small Mason. I consider, in the big scheme of things, I'm right about average. And that's great because what I did is when I made the belts, I put them so that the center slider was in my back, figuring that if people were smaller, they could tighten it up and it would fit, or if they were a little bit larger, they could extend the slide and they could wear those. However, we do have some Masons that haven't been to quite as many festive boards as I have, and so they're still relatively small for right now. And so what they were ending up doing was taking the belts and tying knots in them and things like that, and just, kind of hurt my heart a little bit that they were doing that. So I decided I was going to make some smaller ones. And I'll show you how I'm going to designate these as the smaller ones as opposed to the regular normal size ones a little bit later in the video. But that's really the scheme. So let me talk you through the process of some of the things that you need in order to make your own aprons if you want to make them. Now, also before we begin, I also do want to make sure that you understand that I am in no way, shape, or form a seamstress. This is not my job. I don't do this on the regular. The most sewing that I really kind of sort of have in any real instruction was when I was in 7th grade and we made the little stuffed pillows. You know which ones I'm talking about, the ones that animals, and you went through and you put on the feet and all that other good stuff, and it was great. And you learned how to put polyfill in, and good times. So if you have never really sewn before, if you know how to thread a sewing machine, you can, when you collect all of your materials, make your own aprons. So let me walk through some of the things that you're going to need. Actually, let me show you the product first, okay? This is the actual aprons, or some of the aprons that I made. A couple of years ago, I made funeral aprons, and then I made our Blue Lodge aprons. So when we go through and tell you about everything that you're going to need to make these, let me show you just a little bit. This is gross grain ribbon. You can find them, gross grain ribbon. I found this on Amazon, I believe. We're making lodge aprons, so this is blue. You can typically tell, I don't know if you can see up close, how it has like the lines that are going through there. It's not like your standard kind of Christmas wrapping ribbon type thing. So this is what I used. I have for the leather, this is vinyl. It's not leather itself. And before you guys start yelling at me that I'm not using true leather, please understand that this is all coming from my pocket. The lodge isn't paying me or anything like that. So I had to find kind of a sort of a cheaper alternative for that. And remember that the ones that we had were cloth, so they weren't even leather. So this isn't a problem. The nice thing I do like about this is this is imitation. This is the vinyl, which means when it gets dirty, it's just some hot soapy water. You can just, and it's clean again, and everything's great. You don't have to worry about you know, washing them and things along those lines. So we have the gross grain fabric right here, the imitation leather. On the back, they're all lined with basically a black silk-ish material, which I got, I think, at Hobby Lobby. Went and got a couple of yards of that. This is webbing, just regular good old 1.5 inch webbing. This is just regular webbing that you can find on Amazon. It's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches a bit too thick, inch isn't long enough to really, what I think, to disperse the weight correctly. And then you can find these little buckles and things along those lines. These are not the serpents that normally most aprons have. When I was doing research into making my own, I was trying to find the serpents, and those serpents are like 14, 15, 20 bucks a piece for the set. I think I bought, you know, these connectors. I think there were like 6 or 8 in a pack, and I think I paid like maybe 10 bucks for the entire thing. So, you know, if you really want the serpent that badly, go ahead and spend the money. Have fun. I'm not paying those. So other than that, the other thing that you're going to need is you're going to have that imitation leather. I do have my sewing machine set up in the corner. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. I have a cutting mats underneath of what you see on the leather now, or the vinyl anyway. There's a cutting wheel. You don't have to have this cutting wheel. It's like a pizza cutter, right? And you just kind of click the button and it goes back. Now it's safe. But this does help out. It's a much smoother cut, much quicker. You can just simply use a good old set of scissors if you're just making your own. Gentlemen, not your kitchen scissors. Those things are disgusting. You haven't cleaned them in a while. Don't use them. Get yourself an actual pair of true scissors that are made to cut through heavier material, right? This is a solid thing. Maybe there's one already in a sewing kit if you have a sewing kit, or if you have the pizza cutter, I highly suggest that. It's a whole lot easier. The other thing that I did, I have this backing that we're using for the lodge aprons. And I did go through and I actually got some foam board. This, I think, was Walmart, you know, like $2 for a piece of foam board. What I did is I measured out the aprons that we had, and then I made 2 sets of the aprons. One that is the actual set that I want it to be, and one that's roughly about 1 inch larger all the way around. And the reason we're going to do that, I'll show you in just a few. Okay, so just understand you're going to need a big piece because you're actually making 2 different cutouts for the aprons. Okay. So what I've already done is that I've already measured out the aprons. Now, most aprons are typically going to be anywhere between 13 and 15 or 14 and 16 inches, depending, right? I think Texas, has a little bit larger aprons. Other spots might have different dimensions. Also check with your constitution. Maybe they have a specific size that they want you to wear. 13 to 15-ish is right about where I think that they look good with everything that we're doing with the gross grain, and which is 1.5 inches. The belting, the webbing being 1.5 inches. Once you get that border around 13 by 15 you see the white very nicely, but it's not a very small spot. It's just enough that the proportions, I think, look very, very good to me. So yeah, that's about it. So now let me take you over here to show you what I've actually done thus far. On here, and you may not be able to see it too terribly well. Let me see if I can get down a little farther. There we go. You can already see where what I've done is I've taken this, this is just a 13 by 15 piece of foam board, and I laid it here and I traced it out after making it square so that I have for me, I've measured and laid out my work. So anyway, what I've done is I've taken this piece of vinyl. This is probably 1.5 yards by the time it's all said and done. I did have a lot more vinyl from when I had done this project before. These are kind of my leftover scraps. So what I'm going to do now is simply, I've measured it out. I've tried to use as much as of the vinyl as possible so I don't have any scraps. You can see that there are some kind of bends and things in the fabric right here. Don't worry about those. Those will all fall out eventually now that it's not being kind of stored in a room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pizza cutter and I am just going to go ahead and cut out everything that you see. Here, right here is where we have the aprons, and then here is where we have the flaps. And sometimes the lines overlap. So let me go ahead and get that started, and then we'll be right back with you. All right. All right, so now you can see that I've gone through and I've cut out all of the patterns. I am going to try real quick just to see if I gently heat these up a little bit under an iron, if it's going to kind of take out some of them just to see on one. If you're going to do that and you have kind of like this, make sure that you're using really low heat. It's just enough to get the crease out, nothing more, because you don't want to melt it or anything else along those lines. Okay, so be right back. All right, so we're back now. As you can see, I've ironed them out. For the most part, they look pretty good. You can still kind of see that there's a slight crease right through there. But again, over time, that'll just fall out. One of the things that you have to be careful of when you're ironing vinyl, for instance, is that it is basically plastic. So if you get your iron too hot, it will melt. But one thing that you can do, or one thing that you should do, is more especially always iron it on the non-vinyl side, where the adhesive is and things along those lines. Keep it on a low heat. If for some reason you're absolutely like, dude, this is just not coming out, what you can do is place a paper towel over top of the vinyl itself and iron on the paper towel to try to get out some of those. But remember that as this is vinyl, it has texture. I don't know if you can see that. It has texture in there, but the more that you heat it up, the more that texture is going to fall out, which is going to make basically the piece expand a little or whatever, expand, because now it doesn't have as many crevices and it's laying more flat. So just keep that in mind and don't melt it. So now I told you originally that you needed to have 2 cutouts, right? And I didn't tell you how I actually made the cutouts for the flaps, because that was one thing that was kind of worrying me, like how do I make the cutout for the flaps? And what I did was I made the cutout for the flap as wide as the actual apron. So if my apron is 13 by 15, that means it's probably 15 across and 13 down. So I made the flap 15 wide. And then I came down and started basically taking a look at if I wanted to have the where I wanted the apron to be, right, the flap. So if I take a look at this right now, as I have it set up like this, right over here, can we see that yet? There we go. You can see that this is where about the halfway is probably right where the tip is. So you can come down about, you know, if this is going to be 13, you're going to come down 6.5. What I did is I think I came down about 2 inches on either side, and then I came down to 6.5, and I just struck a line right there. And from that 2 inches down, I created a line, that gave me what it is. So all in all, I think that this is going to be, you know, once we have that 1.5 inch cross grain around, it's going to look very good. Many of you could just leave it like this if that's what you wanted to do, but I like having the back lining and things along those lines, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so the next thing that we have to do is now we need to make the lining, right? I've chosen in my lodge, just because I love the symbology of it, is I use a checkerboard for the back lining, both on the flap and on the apron itself. Now, this is clearly a piece of scrap that I've had before. What I'm going to do is the same basic thing as when I was doing the aprons and measuring and laying them out, but the only difference, of course, is that this time I'm going to do it with the slightly bigger aprons, and it's actually an inch around on all sides is what I found to be the best, and I'll show you why as we continue through the video, okay? Here's what the apron is. Again, this is 13 by 15, I believe. This is actually 13 by 16, which is a good piece of information. So basically I want an inch all the way around. So instead of it being 13, it'll now be 15. Instead of 16, it'll now be 18. So it'll be 15 by 18. Now on this one in particular, you can use, because we're using this piece of fabric here, every single one of these is an inch. So you go over 15 and up by 18, and then all of a sudden you have everything that you need. So you can take this piece, kind of spread it out, and then when you're done, you're going to take it. So we go, and I'm not going to count this one because if you can see, you can't see how this is in the full one. So I'm just going to start, instead of this being a full line, I'm going to start here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So here's my 18. So I'm just going to make a simple little cut right here. 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's where the 15th one's going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this all the way up until I get to there. Let me double count just to make sure. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, okay? So now, all I have to do is take this piece, again, because it's already gridded out for me, and just follow that fabric along. Again, making sure that you're using the cutting mat, right? So this is the box, so if I'm gonna start here, I'm gonna go up through here, and follow the grid that's already laid out for me. So for me, what I'm also going to do is I told you I wasn't going to count this far one over here because it wasn't quite exactly the way I wanted it. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that up. Not that it matters a whole lot because we're just going to cut it out anyway, but it'll make it a bit easier, and I'll show you why. Okay? Here's a hint for some of you guys. Make sure that as you're going along, make sure that you're cleaning up. Number one, keeps all your materials where they're supposed to be, and you know what you've done, what you haven't done, but more especially, if the worshipful master comes home right now and she sees the house all not happy, woo, it's gonna cost you a dinner. So, just saying. All right, so now what we've done is I've already created those 6, as you can see in that pattern. Now I'm going to use this leftover other material that I have, plus the remnants that I had from before, in order to go ahead and make the 6 flaps. Now, the 6 flaps, like I said, this is the original pattern. I created a different pattern that is 1 inch larger all the way around. And I'll show you why in a few. So I'm going to use this one, the bigger one, to create the pattern for the silk material. Okay, so we got to pull out 6 of those. All right, since we won't be doing any more cutting now, what I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to take care of all of kind of like the scraps and stuff along those lines. So I'm going to clean up for just a few minutes, and then I'll be right back with you and show you what the next step is. And before I come back, I am going to take a few minutes. Whenever you're working with fabric, you always want to make sure that it's kind of ironed out and making it look good. One of these flaps, for instance, right here, I don't know if you can see, has a lot of that. I'm just going to iron those out real quick and things along those lines. Okay, so I'll be back soon. All right, we're back again. So we're getting ready to start adding in the backings. Now, over the years, I've tried this a bunch of different ways, and this is the best one that I found. What we're going to do is we're going to take some basting adhesive, right? You can find this at Joann's, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, wherever you want. What we're going to do is we're going to spray down these vinyl pieces on the back of it. So what I'm going to do after I'm done, and it's still good and tacky, I'm then going to take, let me move this down a little bit for you. I'm going to then take, if I just sprayed this one down and it's still tacky, I'm going to take this one and then I'm going to lay it right over top of it, trying to make sure that I'm adhering to making sure that it's covering fairly well in the center, and that I have basically more material. It's in the center of the material even though I can't see it. You can, if you want, kind of spray this and get it good and tacky, and then kind of do like one of these things. I found that doesn't work as well for me because then my hands are handling all of the tackiness, rather than that of just me taking this piece, basically kind of finding the center of it like this and going, okay, there it is, laying it across. It doesn't have to be super perfect. In fact, it's not. And then just kind of like smashing it down, making sure it stays there. So that's the next thing that we're getting ready to do. One way I have done it before is I actually used to use like a hemlock, you know, where you can go through and you can hem up your pants, and if you don't know how to do a blind stitch, you can kind of, it's like a super glue kind of, and you use the iron and you do that. It's not bad, it works. I just prefer this method because I feel like when you do the tape, you only get like a strip here, that's holding it down. When you're doing the adhesive, you can spray the entire thing and you can go all the way to the corners. Now, the reason I have the piece of cardboard there is to protect the table and everything else from getting adhesive all over it and things along those lines. The worshipful master really hates that. So that's what we're going to do next with these. We're going to do the same thing with the squares, and then I'll show you what we're going to do from there. Okay? All right, so here, let me tilt you up so maybe you can actually, if you want to see me. There we go. As you can see, we now have all of these done. What we've just simply done is, God, you still can't see me. There we go. All we've simply done is we've taken the material and we've put a gluing on the back of the vinyl so that when we put it onto the fabric, it stays there. The reason why we're going to do that is what's going to happen is in just a few, after I let this sit, I'm going to let this sit for probably 20-30 minutes just to make sure everything's good and ready to go. We're going to take and we're going to go to the sewing machine. We're going to take that extra material and we're going to roll it up over around the corner of it, and we're going to just run a real simple line just to hold the material in position. We're going to go back and we're going to cut that material, the rest of the material off. That's why it doesn't matter if it's like exactly 1 inch over or 1.5 inches, or you can see when I was doing the flaps, I was kind of like, that'll be enough. Because we're just going to cut a lot of that off anyway. The reason why is if you take a look at this apron here, right, what you can see here on this edge is you can see the backing, you can see the leather, and then you can see the ribbon. And I really don't like that look. What I'd rather have had when I was first doing this, I didn't really figure this out at this point, is to run that stitch, to run that over and then stitch that down right through there. What I was trying to do is to have the least number of stitches on the back so it can look professional. But what I ended up realizing is I don't like the way it looks. So what we're gonna do is in about 20 to 30 minutes or so, we're gonna come back, we're gonna get this all squared away, and we're gonna start running some of our ribbon around once we get the corners tucked up, and then we're gonna run the ribbon. Okay? See ya in probably 30 minutes or so. All right, sorry about that, guys, when I was trying to adjust everything. What I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see through here is that as you take a look, the material, come on, get in focus. Get in focus, there you go. I'm running the edge of the material right on the side of the presser foot. So what that allows to happen is hopefully for all the material all the way around to be fairly consistent spacing. And if you don't have the skills yet to kind of do it that way, then take it nice and slow. You don't have to go super fast, but have the consistency of like the presser foot for right now, at least for this one, okay? So I was saying, keep them pressure foot wide, because if you can see right through here, where I finish, you don't see a double line. I know it's kind of on black, so it's a little bit harder to see. But that looks like one solid line, and until you take a really close look, you're like, oh, that's where that ended. So you have that nice consistent all the way around about the same time. So the next step of all of this, and we don't need this right now, although we'll get back to it in just a second, is then what we're going to do now is go through and we're going to clean up and trim out any of the excess material, because what we don't want to have happen is when we're putting the ribbon on, for the ribbon to stick out, right? So all I'm going to, for this to stick out underneath of the ribbon, and since I've just locked all of this down, all I'm going to do is just take my scissors to sew. I'm going to pull up oh so gently on the material that I just sewn on, right? And all I'm going to do is just clean it up. All that's going to do is just remove a bit of the excess on all of these, so that when the ribbon goes on, we don't have to worry about, you know, some of the black and white showing underneath of the ribbon and all that other goodness. Okay, it doesn't take terribly long, you know, probably about 45 seconds or a minute per, but it's really the nicest way to get everything done. A good pair of quality scissors is one of those things that would really help out here, just to clean up some nice corners. Again, no kitchen shears, brethren. Those things are disgusting. And then what you want to do is finally go back, and you want to, if you don't have a small set of these scissors, these things are great, but you can use the big shear ones. And then you just want to flip it around, clip out any of that little excess that's right there, and we're done. There's number one apron is now done. Okay, so all it did is just cleaned it up a little bit, got it a little bit closer to the seam. Okay, so we're going to continue to do that for just a few minutes, and then we'll be back. All right, so now we got them all cut. So now we see that we have the apron with the backing and the flap. Now the thing that we're missing is going to be the edging. So now we're going to put on the edging. So I'm going to walk you through that process. I have all the gross grain and everything else ready to go. I'm going to do one apron first and then one flap first, and then I'll go back through and get the rest of them done, so you don't have to sit here and wait for however long. Okay? See you soon. All right, so we're back. And what I've done, I don't know if you've been watching or not, is that I've cut all of the ribbon. Now, all of the ribbon have been cut to roughly match the length of 3 sides of it, okay? So for the apron, I'm going down one side across the bottom and back up. I'm not putting any top ribbon on, and I'll show you why later, okay? For the flap, I'm going down the side, down the side, down to the point, back up to the point, and up the side. Nothing on the top yet, and I'll show you why. That's how we're going to connect it all. And you want to keep as little material on top as possible, because it makes it harder for the machine to go through it in the end. So that's why we're going to wait and connect it all together at one time. Okay? So let me show you how to get this started. I'm going to start first with the apron. I'm sorry, with the flap. The one thing I like to do with the flap first, because it is a bit more difficult, is I'd like to start and take my ribbon, fold it in half, kind of make that really nice crease, okay? And what that does is that tells me that that is right where that point needs to go for the center. So I'm gonna start my ribbon off right here at the center. I'm gonna get in as close as possible to line that up. Now this is where I am going to be edging, so I want to get as close to the edge as I can, and I'm going to take it nice and slow, okay? All right, so here we go. Ready? We have that lined up. I put that little crease right in the ribbon, and now I'm going to join the ribbon to the flap, and I'm going to take it nice and slow. So I'm going to actually even kick my machine down just in case my foot hits it. Okay. Now I'm going to start off a little bit, lock the thread down as before. Now I'm going to take and just go nice, slow, and smooth, and edge this as best as I can. Okay. Every time I'm doing this, I'm pulling the ribbon a little bit closer to the edge. I'm guiding it with this. I'm guiding, like you can see me kind of doing this as we're going through, making sure I try to get as close to the edge as I can with that ribbon. Now, once I get close enough down to here, where I see that I'm on the corner, I'm going to stitch basically right to the corner, and then I'm going to back it out a little bit. One more time. And then I'm going to turn, and then this is where I'm going to put in a nice little fold. All I'm going to do is take that ribbon as so, and I'm going to turn my material, and you might have to, and you will, you're going to have to kind of tuck this back flap ribbon up and around to get everything where it needs to be. In fact, I'm actually going to run that one more stitch. I think I can get one more stitch in there where I want it. Now I'm going to take it, turn it. Now I'm going to take and move that ribbon. And I like to put it so that when I have that 45-degree angle, I like to have the top part going over where it goes to the point. I'll show you what I mean in a second. But all I'm going to do is run this up to right about there. Okay, I'm not going to go all the way to the top because remember, I don't want that super thick material. Okay, so from here I'm going to back it out once or twice, put it back in, and then I'm going to release it and take it out. The reason I'm doing that is because now I'm going to take this part of the ribbon and I'm going to start right through here, and I'm going to put that nice little fold in and get it lined up so that it's nice and centered and looks like a solid point like this. Okay, so what that's going to happen is it's going to create a nice, just a nice little point right there, and I'm going to take my sweet, sweet time doing this. Okay, but I'm going to put that point right there, go back to the center, and now, again, very slowly, I'm going to hit it once, lock the thread in, then go straight forward, adjusting the ribbon as close to the edge as I can. When I get to this upper turn here, I'm going to get that as close to the edge as humanly possible. Turn it, take and flip the ribbon, and put that lovely that little degree right in through there, so you have that nice little fold. Again, I prefer to have the top over the sides, and we'll get there in just 1 second. Turn it. Lay that next seat. I do like to add in 1 or 2 back stitches just to lock it in, not going all the way to the top. A couple back stitches and bam. So it takes us 2 stitches basically to get this done, right? And that's kind of the way it needs to be. Now from here, as you can kind of see, I have this little spot right here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to square that up to make that look like a nice line. Now, take your time, make sure that the material lays where you want it to. Don't rush through that, because this is a nice little effect when that line is nice and straight, okay, and the ribbon matches up, okay? Once I get that there, I'm going to put that presser foot down. I'm going to let it go. 1, 2, 3, backstitch it a little bit more. Go all the way down to the point so it locks it in. Now I'm going to walk this all the way back out. Okay, from there, that's when I turn. This ribbon should be laying nice and flat. Now I'm just running it right along the edge as before, nice and slow. here I kind of like to get, what I like to do for this one is when I fold the ribbon over, I want it to line up so that it's not, and I'll show you in just a moment. Let me get this done. Okay. So here is where I put that nice little seam right down the center. On this side, I didn't do it. You can run a quick little seam on there if you want to keep that kind of locked down. In fact, I might do that right now just to say that I have it locked down. And I run one straight stitch in, then I run one straight back out. And then that's not going to go anywhere. And then I just cut my threads. So now you can see the difference, like it has that little seam right there. I do prefer that more. I think it locks it down. And then over here, what I'm gonna do is, and that's what I meant on this side. See how when they meet at a certain point? Right here, like if you do it kind of like, let's say like this, right? That looks stupid. See that little V that occurs? What I want is I wanna have this match up so that there's no little V. It goes one right in, and it's the same direct length, okay? This time I'm just gonna start from the outside, lock it in, move across. Oops, sometimes that happens. Yep. Okay, let's try that again. This one, there was just a little bit too much thread, or I'm running out of bobbin or whatever else, and that's why the machine made that sound. So I'm going to try this again. Okay, now I've locked it in, back out a little bit, back in, turn, and I can follow it all the way up. Down that top edge. Got that, and now I'm just going to run this one here. So now what we have is we have it kind of lined together. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to take my little scissors, or whatever scissors you have, except for the kitchen ones, and I'm just going to I'm going to trim off all of those. We used to have a word in the Marine Corps for all of the little danglies that you had to kind of go and get off your uniform. I'm not sure it's appropriate anymore. So therefore, I'm sure it's not, it's the Marine Corps. So I'm trying to not say that. Go through and cut off all the little threads. Right? Now, once I got that top, flip it over to the back, go to the back, clip them all off. That don't look good. That's all right. Not sure why that don't look good. That machine was messing a little bit. Might change that. Change that tension. It could be that my bobbin's getting low too. So we have that. We got the back. And now you have these little flaps. What I do with these eventually is going to be, I'm going to take my pair of scissors. and I'm just going to cut them. Going to cut them off. You can, if you want to, as long as you're very, 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 very careful. Kind of bend some of the material back. Just kind of give them one of these, and get that all nicely melted so that they don't come out. Happens all the time. Well, not happens all the time. I do this all the time, so therefore I'm not too concerned about burning the material or anything like that. I'm just going to melt them down. And now you have a nice clean apron top. Okay? Pretty simple. Then we're going to do the same thing for this guy. Okay? The only difference is this one's a whole lot easier because you can just start basically right kind of at the top and just go. In fact, you can even probably lock this one down first. Okay. Again, I'm not going to start right at the very, very top because we're going to have to sew over that again, so I don't want to have full material on there. I'm going to line it up with the edge. I always start with the outside edge first because that locks everything else down. A couple of stitches. Back out. All right, here we go. Moving the ribbon to make sure that it stays close to the edge as possible without going over. Now I'm going to tilt, lift, turn the ribbon, square that back up, and now back into it again, lining up the ribbon. You want to make sure that needle gets as close to the edge of that apron as humanly possible. It'll make life so much easier later in the long run. Then when you're turning the material, turn the ribbon, get it all nice and ready to go. And then move that just a little bit. There we go. And let's get back into it. Now here at this point, you can probably just go ahead and just kind of cut some of this off. Nice and across. Lift it, take, torch that just a touch. Be careful of your thread. Back it out. Turn it. Now we're going to go back the opposite direction. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lock down these corners from there. Okay, so we're going to follow this ribbon all the way down. Now when we get about here, this is the choice. Again, you can have it as in up and over. You don't have to do it that way, but this one is going to require probably more work to try to get that 90-degree angle in there without having a lot of excessive material kind of tucked up underneath and not having the V and all that other good stuff. It does take time. Remember, it's just fabric, guys. If it takes you a little bit of time, it takes you a little bit of time. There's nothing wrong with it. It's okay to get frustrated at it. It's just fabric. It will eventually do what you tell it. Now, I ran that corner, just ran that corner down. I'm going to back that sun gun all the way back out to right there. Now I'm going to turn her again, and so I'm going to make this basically one continual stitch is what it is. Okay, so that's why that's happening that way. I did have a way, and I don't remember what it is. Give me a couple more flaps, and it was one continual stitch, I think. But yeah. Take the time to work the material, get that ribbon in there at that 90, there, that 45-degree angle. Okay, take your time, let it sit where it's supposed to. It'll get there. You don't have to super force it or anything like that. Turn that material around, get that laying nice and easy. Roll that material kind of like that so it's all kind of not bunching up, and then run your last thread. Try to keep it as consistent down the line as possible. Pick a spot on your footer and just put it right there. Okay, that's not bad. Now we go through. Where we started is where we ended, which makes it nice for when it comes to clipping all the threads, so you don't have to sit and take and wonder where they all are. You just go to that one corner, clip them out. There's 4 of them, 2 from the beginning, 2 from the end. I'm not sure why backing up is causing a problem with my machine, but it sure is. Anyway, might be a thread problem. Anywho, yeah, it's weird. Anyway, so here it is. Here's that one. So as again, we're going to see, because what's going to happen is we're going to take these, and I'm going to put the belt on here, on the apron, then put this over top, and then sew on a piece over top. And that's how it's all gonna link together. And then it'll be a solid, nice little solid apron. So I'm gonna continue to work on this for a little bit, and I hope you all are able to enjoy. So stick around for a few while I'm getting this done. I'll speed it up. Well, the lady's almost on her way home, so with her arrival, hold on, let me move that a little bit. With her arrival, I'm gonna have to put stuff away for today. It shouldn't take me too terribly long to finish up tomorrow, and I'll make sure to create a video on that so you guys can follow along. All right, see you guys later. Good morning, guys. Back this morning, this afternoon actually. It's about 2 o'clock, I think, or so. Yeah, somewhere around there. And I have rehearsal later this evening, so I'm trying to get some more work done. What I did this morning was I finished up adding in all of the blue trim to all of my sections. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the belt, right? So this is the belt. It's that 1.5 inch webbing that I got off of Amazon, and again, I'll try to have most of this stuff kind of linked to in the section comment. but pretty easy to find. Basically, when I made the first set, I kind of went like this and kind of made a full arm's length, and I thought that was going to be enough. But for some people, that was just a bit too long. So I kind of made another one. I didn't go the full arm's length. I just kind of went, you know, as a little arm spread out, because they weren't super loose on them, but they were just loose enough, right? So I shortened this up probably by a good 6 or 7 inches, and that should hopefully fit them just fine. So the way you're going to do this is you're going to get your webbing, and I did melt down all of these tops so that they don't come loose and things along those lines. And then you're going to get your the connector parts, right? And you can get these as a set. I'll again put these on Amazon if you want it. Now the way to do this is, and there's a very kind of like almost like a specific order. What you're going to do is you're going to start with this little bar right through here. What this is going to do is we're going to take and we're going to push this through and right through the center. We're gonna loop around it like this, right, in the center piece, right, so the two sides are exposed. What that's gonna do is that's gonna lock this down. I'm just gonna basically take it and get it kind of close like here, and I'm gonna sew on this area here. This will also be where I add the tab, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But once I have that done, right, then I'm gonna take the other end, the one that doesn't have the buckle, and I'm gonna slide this piece through it. When I slide this piece through, it's going to hang down at the bottom, pretty simple and easy. Then I'm going to take this piece of material, I'm going to come up and back through that one section, so then all of a sudden now, when this is all connected, this will be the part that moves, right? And here's the hook that you connect to. When that's done, what I'm going to do is then I'm going to put the swivel hook on that one last end, and then I'm going to go ahead and clip it all together. And so then what you have is going to just kind of come up, hook together, kind of like this, right? And from here I can adjust, I can adjust the tension of the belt, okay? So first you want to lock this down on the center piece. Then you want to add in the D-ring. And then from there on the far opposite side, you're going to want to add in the hook. Okay, so I'll kind of show you as we're going through the process. All I'm doing to add these in is just kind of making a square with the machine, nothing too terribly intense. I do like to put a little bit more sewing into these because ultimately where the hook and the D-ring are going to bear most of the burden of tension, right? So I want it a little bit sewn, a little bit tighter, a little bit stronger, maybe a couple extra passes. Because that's where it's going to be. Now, one thing I am going to do, and I told you about this one, is on the gross grain ribbon that I was using, a couple pieces got kind of small. These are what I'm going to use to designate these, and it's just a small little piece of gross grain that I just kind of cut and melted down on the sides. Nothing too great. But when I put this through, and I put this through the center piece, right, and then I kind of get ready to lock it down. Just like this, right? I'm gonna have that create a little loop on the first one. I'm gonna sew this part right into here. Now, the reason I'm doing that is not for any reason other than if you're looking at the aprons and you see the one with the blue tab, you know, and this one's even a little bit big, I might even make it just a touch smaller, then you know that it's the smaller version, right? So that when you're wearing this, no one can see the blue tab, so that, you know, you don't need everybody else to know your business, that you're wearing the smaller one. If you know, maybe you're uncomfortable, maybe you don't want people to know that you're wearing the smaller one, for whatever reason, that's fine. So that's why it's on the inside, or will be on the inside, so that no one else can see it, so you know which one easily, as you're looking, you can pick the one that has the blue tab, but you don't have to see it through the meeting. Okay, so let me get this started. So one of the things I forgot to mention is that I prefer to have the tabs, or the like halfway kind of part in here, on the inside of the body. I think it gives a smoother line, right? So when I have the outside and I'm going along this way, right, this is going to be hooking onto the person, right? I'm going to want to make sure, basically, that the inside of this loop and the inside of this one match up. So that means that everything's going to be right on the inside and make life a whole lot easier. Okay? So just keep that in mind. You know what? I'm actually going to put a tab on the outside here. This one might be a little bit harder to see unless you're kind of digging for it, right? You can kind of, yeah, maybe there's one in here, but if I put it right on the outside here, just a small one, it'll be a whole lot easier to see. And I think that'll make it more easily recognizable to guys when they're getting ready for lodge. So that's what I'm going to add in now. So let that be a lesson to you, to wait a time with patience, I'm just saying. So what happened, I don't know if you just saw, I realized that when I put this together, it was more facing, the insides weren't facing together, and I don't like that look. I'm sorry, I like this look, but it was kind of more like this. So this part would have been on the outside of the body, not on the inside where it can be covered up. And I really despise the way that looks. And so basically what you had to do is you have to go back through, and if you've never made a sewing mistake, you will eventually end up making a sewing mistake, I promise you. That's why this little thing right here, it's called a seam ripper, right? All it does is you go in, you find the seams, and you just kind of rip them out. This thing is probably like $3 or $4 maybe, especially if you get like a quality, like this handle actually works much better. You can find one of the small sewing kits. They're like 99 cents. They work, they absolutely do. But if you're doing something like that, if you're ripping out some seams and you're doing a lot of it or things along those lines, this works really, it's worth the extra $2 or $3. But I had to rip out the seams and rip out the stitching that I did because I just I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it feels. So I wasn't satisfied with it, right? So lots of great lessons in all that. Number one, slow down. Number two, check your work. Number three, the great thing about sewing is sewing doesn't have to be perfect because you can go back through real quick and you can just kind of rip out the seams and then start at it again. You won't see any of the holes or anything along those lines in there. So if you guys mess up a little bit, don't worry about if you mess up. Just take your seam ripper, rip them out, start again, clear mine. So a good lesson, I guess, but you can also see how much time it took for me to clean that out in order to restart. So take your time the first time. Okay, so now we just got done making all the belts. It took us probably, around probably about 15 minutes or so. It's not terribly long to do 6 belts. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add the belts, and we're getting down to like the last 2-ish steps of everything, okay? What we're going to do now is we're going to add the belts to the flaps. Now the way that we're going to do that is we have one flap side that is not ribboned or not trimmed or whatever you want to call it, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to place this belt, right, with the outside facing, and I'm going to lay it on top like so, okay? What I'm going to, you can't see, like so. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to put this belt right here. I'm going to make sure that it lines up with the top, not below it, but right with the top. And I'm actually going to take it and sew it down just like this across the top. What that's going to do, especially as I put an entire set across here, it's going to distribute the weight evenly, so that when it starts pulling, it kind of uses the whole material rather than that of just like one seam type thing. So that'll attach the belt to here. What I'd like to do is I typically like to take, let's say for instance, one side, whatever side it may be, this side for instance, and I'm going to hold it kind of like with the buckle kind of right at the end of my fist, kind of like right there. And then I'm going to place my thumb kind of right here, and that's going to be the distance. About a hand width distance is about what it's going to be. I'm actually going to change it around. I'm going to put this side, the actual clasp on this one. And so what you'll see is that when it's all said and done, on this side you'll see that little blue tab right there. You'll know that's one of the small ones. This will stay connected, and then that'll give all of this room for this side to adjust. Okay, so the short side is going to be the one with the clip. The long side is the one without the clip. Okay, so what I am also going to do with this is, because this is going to be on the back of the apron, and we can kind of see that, but I want to see the gold on top. I'm going to leave the gold bobbin. I'm going to leave the gold thread on top. I'm going to take the black thread, the black bobbin, and use that. So if I go and find my bobbins, here they are. I have a set of black thread ready to go. I'm going to switch this out because I want this to match the black and the white that's on the bottom of the apron, while the gold stays on top. So if that doesn't make sense to you, give me just one quick second. Let me get that lined up real quick, and I'll try to make sure you understand exactly what I mean. So remember that the threads, how they're arranged on the machine is how they're arranged on the cloth. If I want blue showing here on the top, I have to have blue on the top. If I want black showing on the back, then I have to have black in the bobbin, right? If I put blue here, then blue's going to show here and black will show on this side, and that's not what I want. But because I'm going to put this apron belt on here, right? I want to have the gold on top, just in case when we, depending on how we're wearing our aprons, people might see the gold. So I want to have gold thread to match the gold belt, and on the back I want it to be black, and so it matches the checkerboard. Okay, so let me show you how I'm going to do that. All right, so now I have that sewn on. You can see that there's a nice kind of stitched line right across. All I did was outline the entire material, right? But right here in between the ribbons is where I doubled up. I reversed it a couple of times. And then these single ledges up around here, I'm not going to worry about doing that. But when I get to the ribbon, again, I double up here, I back up, and then down here once or twice, and then back here once or twice. And then I run that line all the way back over again, and then finish out the piece. So on the back, you can see that we have the black thread for the belt, but here on the front, so we have the gold up here, so you really can't tell. And that's exactly the way I want it to be, right? So black, nothing but black and white on the back, nothing but gold on the front. And so that's why, especially if you're making multiple aprons, it's really nice to kind of do it in stages like we're doing, because every time that you got to keep changing out the bobbins, it becomes a little bit more of a pain in the butt. But we're almost done. We're getting close. We only have basically 2 more things to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish the rest of these up, and then we'll get to the last 2 parts of it. Okay? All right, so we're gonna get to the last part of how we're gonna make the apron. What we haven't done is we haven't finished off the top yet. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take and we're gonna use this ribbon and we're gonna make that final piece. We're gonna connect it all together. It's gonna be freaking on point and looking wonderful. So the first thing that I'm gonna wanna do is I'm gonna wanna change out my ribbon, my threads. I'm going to go back to the blues. And I'm gonna take and put this, feed that through real quick. Now, one of the other things that you have most importantly about working on this, especially this final one, is that the needle that you are using needs to basically be brand new or used very little anyway, and really should be like the super strong or the leather one, because we're getting ready to punch through a whole lot of material. And if you don't, you run the risk of either breaking the needle or doing some other stuff, you know, and you don't want that. So please, by all means, please make sure that you're using those nice, good, thick, heavy needles on this, okay? It's the only way it's gonna work. Just change out my bobbin. And pull that thread up. Right through here. Pull this. Got that. Got that. Feed those both underneath. Bam, bam, bam. I know I said that I've only had, you know, freaking like middle school kind of work on this, and that's true. I'm not lying to you about that. But I have been doing this a lot, so that's the reasoning why I know how to quickly change my bobbins and my threads. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of basically just take, and I'm going to have it just a bit longer, and I'll show you why in just a few minutes, okay? But basically want it just a touch longer, okay? And then I'm going to make a cut. I'm going to want 6 of these in that length. So 1, all right, so this part is, the last part is the one that's the slight trickiest, okay? What I'm gonna do, let me move you down here a little bit, is I'm gonna mark onto the fabric, okay? What I basically wanna do is create a line, let's say about, ½ inch, right? And I'm gonna strike a line at ½ inch right there to this other ½ inch on the inside here. Now what that's gonna do is gonna give me the opportunity, and that's not gonna be long enough, that's what I thought, so I brought this out. You can use anything that's fairly well straight. Is this exactly straight? Not really, but it was from my wife's birthday, so whoever gave her the Godiva, thank you. It was delicious too. But I'm gonna take and I'm gonna create just a, basically kind of a straight line across there. Now don't worry, okay, you're not even gonna be able to see it by the time it's all said and done, okay? And if you can, I mean, we'll kind of wash it away. Now the reason we're doing that is, and I don't know if you can see it, just a really kind of simple line right there. I might even go back through here and clean up some of this black and white material that's just a little bit close to that line and clean it up just a touch more, because that's going to be the line that we're going to use to strike our top ribbon. And this entire thing can be super awesome, but if that top ribbon is not a straight line across, it just looks stupid. So what you do then is you strike that little line right there, and that gives you a straight edge for you to be taking a look at where your ribbon is, okay? So what I've done is I've gone through, except for that one spot right there, and there's a couple spots, okay? And I'm just trimming some of this away so that if God forbid I make a mistake, it does happen every once in a while, as you can see with the dot, okay? Moving some of that away, but I have a line struck across. I don't know if you can see it. It's that super light. Yeah, you can see it a little bit there. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to take this ribbon, okay? I'm going to lay it across like this, okay? And I'm going to have that line basically stretching from these 2 points, okay? That's gonna create the top for me. All right, that's gonna give me about an inch, because it's an 1.5 inch cross grain, right? So now I'm gonna attach it to the back, okay? So what I'm gonna end up doing first is I'm gonna just start sewing across, and then I'll show you from there what needs to happen, okay? All right, you wanna do that. All right, so we're down to the last kind of couple of steps, right? There's one more step basically that we have to do. And to be honest with you, it's the one that's the most tedious and can be kind of like the most heartbreaking depending on how your machine's working, right, and what we're trying to do. But first what I'm gonna do is you see this, and I'm pretty sure that many of you know that like there's these side tabs on here, and you go like one could be significantly longer than the other, things along those lines. Why are they there? And I'll show you in a minute, but what I'm gonna do is basically take about a finger's width if I have too much, about a finger's width. It's very exact science, and I'm just gonna go ahead and melt them down, and I'll show you why I'm doing that in just a second, okay? So I'm gonna go through here, about a finger's width, melt them down. Finger's width. You know, I'm sure that over the years, I'll probably, when I continue to do this, will spend way more money in materials than what I need to, because things like this, where I'm like, oh, just take a finger width off there, you made it too long. But I'm not in this for profit. I'm doing this because I like to do it, and I like taking care of my lodge and taking care of my brothers. So that means over the years, I got to buy an extra 50-yard roll of gross grain. It'll be worth it. Anyway, plus these scraps, I mean, don't ever get rid of these scraps. I mean, I know it seems kind of weird, and I'm not really a hoarder in any way, shape, or form, but just like when we were doing the belts, you know, that worked out great. You know, I had those couple of small extra pieces. Plus, the other thing is that when you're feeding it through the machine, if you have them just a touch longer, sometimes you can kind of grab it and pull it through rather than having to yank on the material itself, which is nice to have, just that little extra handle. You could probably see me do it a couple of times with that. Now, the last step of everything is to do the next, right? We are now going to take our apron, our apron, and then we're gonna sew it to this. Now, even if you take a look right now, what's gonna happen is that we're going to line up the top of this apron with the top of the flap, and we're gonna roll these edges over just a bit, okay? And you can actually sew them down if you really wanted to. I'm not gonna say don't do that. Okay, in fact, I may do that anyway. But what we're gonna have is we're gonna take the top of this apron and we're gonna match it up with the top of that apron. Then we're gonna roll these over just like that, and then I'm gonna stitch a line all the way down. And that's gonna give kind of a nice, really clean look on everything. At least I think it does. And that's how we're gonna make that happen, okay? So this is the one where you have to be just a touch more careful. Because the material is so thick, it'll move on you. So you want to make sure that as you're doing this, you're lining this up as best as can be, and then you're going to end up like an apron like that. So let me get to it. So what I did first, and I haven't done it this way, but I think I might continue to do it this way because I like the way it works, is that I took that first line across the back and I just sewed the two halves together. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and now that they're already sewn together, now I'm going to put the ribbon across, and then I don't have to worry about the material moving on me quite near as much, as I'm just basically securing down the ribbon. And I'll probably run 2 lines of the ribbon across, so we can make sure that they stay nice in line and things along those lines. So that's about it. And let me get this done, and I'll show you what it looks like. So there it is. There's our apron. As you can see, again, I think it looks pretty good. Is it the most professional and clean of jobs at all times and things like that? No, it sure isn't. But you know what it is? It's homemade and it's from a brothers, and that's what matters the most, right? To make sure that those guys are wearing our lodge aprons and being a part of what we're doing. So on that, I might take a little bit of water. There's a little bit of grease stains here and there from the machine and moving it around and stuff along those lines. But that's the apron. It's actually really simple to make if you can just sit down and kind of get the work done. You know, and it's a great gift to make for people. Right now, I can typically make about one in about an hour, hour 15, depending. So, yeah, I hope that helps, guys. If you ever thought about making an apron, by all means, please do it. It's fantastic. It's such a fun time to do. So, until next time, guys, stay fervent. Hey guys, before I finish out this video, I do want to let you know that one of the added benefits of making your own aprons, especially when taking into consideration maybe those less experienced masons that haven't been to a bunch of festive boards yet, is that we also have the opportunity to really take into consideration maybe some of those masons that have been to a couple of extra festive boards and really enjoyed those Masonic green beans. What I mean by that is by taking maybe some of the extra material that you have and, for instance, making belt extenders. I had a couple of these buckles left. I had some of the belting material left, and so I created two belt extenders for those masons in my lodge that maybe might need just a little bit of extra material around the belt of the apron so that they're not pulling them really tight or they're not sitting where they're supposed to and things along those lines. So if you have that, I highly encourage you to also make a couple of belt extenders if you have the extra material. But one of the other things that really does lead to is the idea of candidate regalia. Now, if you haven't checked out your candidate regalia in a while, I would totally do that. Make sure, obviously, that it's washed and all that other good stuff. But take a look at the sizes of that candidate regalia that you have. We know, again, that since men are typically a bit bigger now than what they were when probably most lodges bought their original candidate regalia, there are probably sizes that won't fit larger men. And what you can do is you can go to Walmart, you can buy a pattern for basically pajama pants, and then you can make them into an extra large or an extra large or whatever else, and just get the material to do that. And that's going to go a long way to make sure that those candidates feel welcome and considered and things along those lines. And we as Masons should be doing that. We should make sure that, our candidates are clothed appropriately without trying to fit them into something that doesn't fit and showing them that consideration. Okay? So until next time, guys, stay fervent.